Ron asked, I have a pre-suit mediation, and one of the parties is incarcerated. Any, insight into how best to go about being able to mediate with this individual? And so, you may have some insight there. Let me say, I'm going over what Diana said about, prison staff and how they can, sometimes they're nice, and sometimes, they have so much going on that they can be a little difficult sometimes. In my case, uh, court ordered, and other things that Diana said were really important. You want to notify them, right? So we sent with time, we sent Diana, I apologize. We sent with time, we sent, the order. So we notified them. We let them know what the date and the time was weeks in advance, and that's helpful, right? But that day, when this was 2013 or something like that. So this was telephonic. There, we weren't doing things, via Zoom, right? Um, we called in. I said who I was, and the prisoner, wasn't available. And I said, excuse me, but we called. We let you know that mediation was taking place. To please have the prisoner available. Would you be able to get the prisoner? I'm not gonna. I don't remember exactly, but they weren't being cooperative, and so what I said was, I said, well, listen, I understand. I know that you have a difficult job. With that said, this was court ordered. And so, officer, if you'd like to tell the judge why you're not going to bring, the prisoner so that he can, take part in mediation, I'm assuming you're going to be fine doing that. But this was court ordered. I might have said something else, but the point is that got them to do it begrudgingly.
Mm.
This is not court ordered, so you don't have that in your back pocket. So it's more important that you want to enable it ahead of time. So there's a lot there. Make sure that you schedule it with plenty of time. Call them, say, what are the procedures? I'm a mediator. I'm trying to schedule this. What are going to be the most accommodating ways to get this done? Date, time, FYI, right? Because you don't have a court order to back you up, right?
And I would also
Go ahead.
find out. Okay, go ahead.
Go, no, please.
I would find out who the top honcho is or something, because they're likely to say, oh, that's a decision so and so has to make, and he's off at lunch, or he's not here now, or whatever. If you could get something in writing from them, that's good. But they're I don't know. It just seemed to me that they were trying not to make access easy. And another thing, just to be aware of, things are happening. Like they do a count and somebody's missing, and then they lock down the whole place. And
Nothing you
it
can do
could be
about
like
that.
there's nothing you can do about it,
Yeah.
and they may not tell you exactly what's going on. But things are going on, and you just don't know.
Is
Uh,
there a chance that, and in your instance, it sounds like, Tye, you were going to do a telephone mediation. Do you
Telephonic,
know if
yeah.
there's a chance that they have updated that to Zoom, or do you think it's still telephonic?
I think so, right?
They do.
Okay.
A lot of the facilities have video conferencing now,
Good.
but I have found it most effective to coordinate with the inmate's classification officer. They're the person responsible for a lot of that, and I've had absolutely no trouble getting legal calls. So I would reach out to the classification officer for whoever the inmate is and ask them, tell them this is part of a, pre-litigation proceeding, but it is related to a court case that is to be filed, and see if the classification officer can guide you. In my experience with the state prisons, the classification officer is the key.
Great.
That person and the inmates that I've had contact with, I coordinate everything through the classification officer. We set up our phone conferences, and I've not done in person, I've done phone.
Right.
But the classification officer is an incredible resource for you.
That's great.
And so I usually try to coordinate around their schedule, ask them what day of the week and time of day is most convenient. And I've had a couple times where they've been had a lockdown situation or
Mhm.
power outage or some emergency come up, and it's totally beyond their control.
Right. Right.
But they are the ones that have the most contact with the inmates, and can have a good rapport with them. So I would start there and make a friend first, and then you may not need all the big guns and everything else later. I'm
Right.
sure it
Yeah.
varies facility to facility, but the two state prisons that I've dealt with in both instances, the classification officers were amazing. So
Right.
I try that.
Mhm. That's good advice. I kind of have like a Perry Mason question here. So,
Hold on one
um,
quick second, Ron. I apologize. It looked like Kelly was going to say something, and I thought maybe
oh, I'm
she might
sorry.
be able to add. And by the way, Nancy, I loved that. That was really good. And I love when you said make a friend first. I really liked that. Thank you. Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks. One of the things that I was just thinking then that I know is an issue in Virginia, and again, you guys know I'm new to Florida, is that there was always the question of what they could sign, because in Virginia, an incarcerated person is under a disability and gets a guardian ad litem for very many civil actions. And so there was a question of if they are, if you've reached agreement in a mediation, can they actually legally contract, legally consent without a guardian ad litem? Are they under a legal disability? So that was always an issue that we had in doing, separation agreements and divorce decrees and things in Virginia. So we had to have a guardian ad litem. So just, it may
Wow.
not be an issue, but just something to keep in mind. And I believe that now with the advent of COVID, that what I've found was that the in jail staff understands, and so they're much more readily willing to work through those kind of the Zoom issues for you.
That's interesting that you say that. I haven't had those issues as a mediator in Florida, and they have been able to sign. But I really like that you said that, because what if you have to deal with an inmate who's in another state? That might be something to consider. At the very least, in Virginia, that is the case. That's really interesting, and I'm glad you said that, because if we are ever somewhere else in the future and it comes up, you may remember what Kelly just said. Great point. Ron, sorry to have interrupted you. Please keep going.
Yeah, so this is just kind of like just a curious question. So in this case, it's a woman that's incarcerated, and there's some issues that surround domestic abuse, restraining orders, those types of things that I am not certain at this point if they're part of the reason why she's in there or not. I haven't gone that far. And since mediation is confidential, I'm sure that phone calls are listened to. So how does that work if she admittedly says something that could further incriminate her and people are listening to that? Does that affect her in terms of the court in her case that
Yeah.
is not being, talked about mainly in terms of like, okay, so you have a child, you have a parenting plan, may have assets. How does that work? Mediation's confidential. No one's really allowed to be a listener, but yet you have listeners. Am I thinking too deep
No,
into this matter or?
no, you're not. That has come up for me. So before I open my mouth, though, that's a great question. Can anyone have thoughts with respect to what Ron just said? When he calls in, speaks to an inmate, there could be any one of a number of issues. Some of it could be domestic violence, but regardless, mediation is supposed to be confidential. What about what they say, this inmate says during a mediation, while they're incarcerated in jail? And what about anyone who might be in there? Would there be someone in there? In my experience, every time I called in, there was somebody in there, and it was one of the POs. So, any thoughts, anybody? It's a great question.
Well, also, don't they record a lot of the telephone conversations or don't they have the right to do that?
Sure, but regardless, right? Even with that in mind, what are our thoughts? Let's assume it is going to be recorded. Question is, would it be able to be used, right?
Get it?
What was that?
I would be wary of pre-trial mediation while they're awaiting trial. I would be concerned about doing that at all. But then if it's post-trial so that they're just serving a sentence, then I think you just have to get them to waive confidentiality for that. I mean, can't they waive confidentiality for mediation?
Well, so if mediation takes, the question is pre-trial, post case, pre-case, or in their case, pre or post. Regardless, Ron is a certified mediator, so if he is conducting a mediation, is it confidential? But that's I love the question. It looked like Tess was going to say something.
Yeah,
Hey,
sorry.
Tess, good to see you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Long time.
Good to have you back.
Working in the office on a Saturday, gross. But yes, I was just gonna say that. So when it comes to the inmates and stuff, right? It is absolutely the parties' confidentiality to waive, right? Pursuant to the rules of mediation stuff. The only thing that we can do, because that's one of the things that I think that we struggled with when we were going from in-person to virtual, is that all we can do as the mediator to say, listen, this is the confidential proceeding, and then keep going and doing your wonderful, amazing things, because that's the limitation that we have in our new world. And especially with inmates, we are unfortunately also subjected to an inmate facility, right? And the way their requirements are and all those things. So the only thing that we can do as mediators is say, let me just remind you, this is a confidential proceeding, and just keep going. Yeah. Whether post mediation, pre-suit, or after, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right, because we're initiating it, confidentiality is going to apply. But again, there's these other considerations. What I did was I said, so, Officer so-and-so, I just want you to know that this confidentiality, applies to you as well, FYI. Now, how that may be handled posts, if something comes up or what have you, don't worry about that now. Just make sure that you give a good a good opening statement. And anyone who's in there, if anyone is in mediation, right, confidentiality extends to them, and we need to let them know that confidentiality extends to them. I've never had any of those, officers do anything other than facilitate while they were in there. But because they're in there, I want to address them and make sure that everybody knows everything is confidential. And I think just like, Tess is saying, and then you go ahead and start mediating,
Is there any, I know that when I speak with people who are incarcerated, we have legal calls, and the legal calls are not monitored. Inmate is in a room by themselves with a phone, and the call is not monitored. And I don't know if there's any way that a mediation would be considered a legal call. That might be something worth asking a classification officer about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It kind of is. And the only reason why I know this is because our office has to facilitate mediation with incarcerated parties, right? That's what we have to do. We have to reach out to the facility.
Right.
And so the way they will coordinate this and have the technology and the officers and all those things available, they are treating it as something that's illegal. They even make us send them the notice of mediation or a court's order to say that we are giving them, they have to provide this service to the inmate because the notice says so, the order says so, and all those things. So the way they internally handle it, it is under a legal definition for it.
I would agree. And I remember that's how we did it when I was at the court. There's only one difference here, and that is this is a pre-suit. So still do your notice though, and hopefully the process will handle it as such. You're not. Go ahead.
The only other question I have about, so we keep talking about this being pre-suit.
Yeah.
If the party on the outside knows they're going to file, I'm wondering if there's any reason that it's not actually been filed.
Good.
Because
good
then
thought.
once you've got your case and your case number, you could petition the court for an order for mediation, and then some of these headaches might go away. So while I think it's certainly reasonable to try to do it as pre-suit, if you see too many barriers, it might be worth inquiring as to when they anticipate filing, and it may be that filing will actually make the whole process easier.
I agree. I like that, right? That's a
Yeah.
good backup.
I was thinking of the same thing. This is Diana. And I was thinking just to make sure that when you do your notice, when you file a notice. Okay, so I would just make sure always better after the suit's been filed, and then that you do your notice, and then I would be explicit in the notice saying that one person is incarcerated and that the you know, whatever the what you know how you set up the, like, where the time is and where what the meeting number is and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I would also put in something that the cooperation of whatever facility is, you know, required or something, just to put something on paper that gets, you know, filed with the court. And so if they start acting up, you have something there. That's just,
Yeah, if it's post filing,
yeah, post
you'd be
filing. Yeah,
able to say that.
pre-filing, you can't file a note. I mean, yeah, pre-filing, you're not filing a notice, you're filing an email or something. You're sending them an email.
Well, but for the purposes of the you know, the facility, I would send them a notice, you know, just the
With a
way you
header,
would normally.
with their names on it, like in the court? No.
No,
No,
but
just notice, just a
notice of
mediation.
virtual mediation after you
Oh,
talk to
okay.
you know, the coordinator, the inmate coordinator, and make friends with them and say, you know, when can we do this, and you get it, then send in, you know, the a notice of virtual mediation, just to kind of keep it along the track of the way it normally goes, you know, the norm kind of thing. And hopefully they're going to facilitate. But if there are problems, you know, the question is, can you do it virtual? Can you do it telephonic? And if there's issues, then address those issues at that point. See, but hopefully you're going to be able to, you know.
Sorry, I was gonna add just one thing. I think it also depends on the circuit and where you're doing the mediation, because I love the Ninth Circuit. And so for the Ninth Circuit, we have a standing administrative order that says pre-suit or even after suit has been filed, so long as there's contention between parties, they are supposed to mediate or do a pre-trial conference together and meet and confer and all those things. So I think that even when you have an inmate for a pre-suit, you can reference, depending on your circuit,
Right.
that administrative order to say, hey, I got standing.
I love that. That is a great suggestion. I love it. Everybody, well done. Thank you so much.